and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here on the call today. It's great to see what's happening in Parliament and great to see the change that we hope will continue. My name is Sophie Sushan. I'm one of the digital transformation consultants here at the Digital Transformation Hub, a part of the Info Exchange group with Connecting Up. I also want to say a huge thank you to the Digital Innovation Future teams who have been a great sponsor of this session today. The DIV 2022 is a 2-week festival from the 24th of August to the 7th of September, so we're in the last couple of days, celebrating Victoria's tech-driven innovation by showcasing the best of Victoria's technology culture across the industry. If you haven't checked it out, you can jump on the DIV website. Before we begin our Microsoft Teams extravaganza today, a couple of housekeeping comments. We really encourage you to ask as many questions as you have through the session. No question is too silly. Please type them in the chat box and I will answer them by the end of the session. Please note that the webinar is being recorded. A link to the recording, the slides, and a short survey will be sent to you as soon as the webinar ends. About a key range of topics of Microsoft Teams. So considering that, that's why today we are on Teams. And so firstly, good job, you made it. Some of you guys made it faster than we did. So great job. And we are here to make it as interactive as possible. So you're welcome to keep your cameras on and stay on mute during the presentation. By the end, if you can either come off mute to ask your questions or pop them in the chat box. Today we're going to talk about 3 key topics: how you collaborate, how you participate in meetings, and how you present. So for the first half, we're going to talk about collaboration within Microsoft Teams. So what that looks like for different users, how you can chat in different ways, so using teams and channels, and how you can confidently navigate them together. Then we're going to jump into participating in meetings, so how you interact with other meetings in a call using the chat function, how you can share your desktop or your screen with your audio, how you can amend your backgrounds, navigate different views, and what you prefer. Then once you've understand that, we're going to jump a level and we're going to teach you how to host meetings and webinars, so working with polls, recordings, captions, and breakout rooms. Great. So before I start that, I just want to talk through that everyone's view of Teams can sometimes be different, and that's okay. There are a range of different reasons that might be, and accessibility reasons within your application. Some of that might be configuration settings within your organization, whether you're using the app or the browser, whether you're using a Mac or a Windows, your screen size, so do you have it set on full screen or do you have it minimized? Or are you zoomed in a little bit? That can reduce what you see on the screen, and how you're accessing Teams. Are you on a laptop? Are you on an iPhone? Are you on an iPad? Each have different views. If you are having issues, please check firstly your Zoom on your Windows menu option, or the more actions, so the 3 dots in your menus. Otherwise, either reach out in the chat, or if it's been a long-term issue, speak with your IT provider. So let's start discussing the Microsoft Teams application and how you can use different features to effectively collaborate. If you do have a second screen, please open the Teams application and we'll walk through some of these screenshots together as I talk. If a question arrives, pop it in the chat box and we'll respond. So there's 2 ways you can chat in Teams. You can either chat privately or in a group chat in that chat function up there in the red bubble there. This is really useful if you've got a random question for someone or you want to chat about the weekend. The second option is using the Teams collaboration place. So this is sort of your teams is what we call them. And here is where you can post questions or conversations and create a log where you can engage on one key topic. Some of the useful features here is the @ symbol. And as you can see on the screenshot here, my name is in purple because Michelle has used the @ symbol, and that will directly message me and give me a little notification, an activity notification, that someone is wanting to talk to me and ask me a question. It's quite similar to the functionality in Facebook. You can also, if you want to add 2 statements within the one chat, you can press Shift Enter, and it will bring your cursor to the new line. I find that useful. Sometimes I have multiple things I want to say in one chat. It can be very helpful. The other piece that I use quite a bit is this search function at the top of the Teams application. So it will search an individual or a keyword and give you when you've spoken about that in the past. I find this really useful when I've forgotten a topic or I've forgotten something important. I'll jump in here and go, oh, what did we talk about in this? And I'll be able to find that. Which of these options do you use more frequently, the chat or the Teams function? Pop it in the in our chat in this meeting, and we can see how everyone uses it. Now, the Teams collaboration space can be a little bit confusing, so we're going to dive into that further. There are 2 ways that teams are set up. Firstly, in the top bubble, this is what Microsoft Teams calls a team. This is a collection of people, content, and tools surrounding different projects and outcomes within your non-for-profit. The team is typically designed to bring together a group of people who work closely together. So this might be dynamic for a project-based work, or this might be ongoing to reflect your internal structure of your non-for-profit, so your departments and your locations. In this team, you can have conversations, files, notes across the channel that is only visible to those members. Then we dive into channels. So channels are dedicated sections within your teams to help you categorize topics, projects, disciplines, whatever works for your non-for-profit. So we can see here that I'll just ask if you can go on mute, please. Thank you. Thank you.
No, really, that's clear.
Mute.
Yeah.
There we go. So you can, as you can see here, we've set up the channels as each webinar, for example, but you might set yours up according to key projects that you're delivering on. I will also note that each channel starts with a general one. That is a default and that always is there, so you can sort of put anything in that one. Channels can be accessed to all of the participants within the team, or you can have a private channel. So you might limit that to certain people within your team. Seen this when you might have a HR channel within that team or something like that. Despite the lingo being confusing of teams and channels, the capacity to collaborate with the right people at the right time will enhance how you work, no matter where you're located. By right-clicking or using the 3 more actions next to the channel, go down here, next to the channel, you'll be able to edit or hide the channel if you no longer want to see it. Please do note if you delete the channel, it's gone for good and you lose any history or documents stored in that. You can also add another channel within the 3 dots there for the team level. You can manage the team so you can see who has access and add or remove as required. The great benefit of the channels is you can also add any relevant apps that are useful to you. So you can see up the top there, there's files, posts, and wiki. They're your standard ones that you have. We're not the biggest wiki fans. We typically will add a OneNote page there by clicking the plus, and you can add as what you require. We see a lot of organizations use OneNote there, also use Microsoft Polls or Trello. There's a whole bunch of apps that you can use to enhance your collaboration. The files, this is connected to your SharePoint. So you might connect the file structure that is suitable for the team. And that can work really well as an all-in-one application. With some of those files, you can open them within the Teams application, or you can open them in the browser as well. Great. So that's how you use Teams to chat, collaborate, and share with everyone. Just going to chat if there's any questions. Yeah, so a lot of people use the chat function. That's great. Start exploring how you can use the Teams channel to more effectively enable how you speak with everyone. Great. So now we're going to jump into how to run meetings. So how you utilize meetings within Teams to support your collaboration. So there are a range of different types of meetings you might host on Teams. You might have an ad hoc one where you need quick help, real-time help, and what you've chatted in the conversation isn't in chat is not enough. You can just give them a call and talk through it. You might also have project-based or group-focused meetings. So these might be your weekly team syncs or a daily catch-up. You might also have standalone or scheduled meetings, such as your board meetings or your all-staff meetings, that style of things. The other one, which we'll talk about later in the session, is you might have external webinars or events. So Microsoft Teams does recommend treating these slightly different because there's some additional features you need with webinars, and we'll go look at that later in the session. So in this next piece, we're going to really focus on the ad hoc, the project-based, or the standalone meeting. Great. So we've started using the chat function, and I'm going to get everyone to now use that as well as the raise your hand function. So I'm going to ask a question to everyone, and I'm hoping you'll be able to respond in chat. So my question is, what did you have for breakfast today? So I've put the question in the chat. If you can respond with what you had, it'll be great to see what we all had for breakfast. Great. Yes, Rachel, I had coffee too. Coffee, wheat bix. I like to see there is people actually eating as well as just drinking a lot of coffee. Toast, that's great. So we're using that chat function. I really appreciate that you've had time to have an omelette this morning. I wish that I had that much time. And maybe you might need to go get some breakfast. Now let's use the raise your hand feature. So what I'd like you to do is raise your hand if you believe that pineapple should be on a Hawaiian pizza. And sometimes I either get a lot of response to this or I don't. We've got 4. Okay, so not a lot of people necessarily believe that's true. That's okay. Oh, we've got a couple more. That's good to see. I like pineapple on pizza, clearly. The raise your hand feature is really useful, especially when you're in a larger meeting, to be able to get the attention of the presenter. So you can see you can raise your hand and now you can put your hand down as well. So you can also use that if you've got a question during the session that can help you. Right. So now that you understand the raise your hand and the chat and how it can help both how you collaborate in a session and also how you get the attention of the presenter. Now you can use the share feature and the mute and unmute feature to be able to work effectively together. So you would have noticed a little bit earlier that someone was unmute and it gave a background noise. That can happen from time and time again, especially when someone might be in a loud room or in a collaboration space. the mute feature can be really useful. And so as a presenter in this session, I was able to mute that individual, but a lot of the time you can look out for that blue box that sits around their little camera and then ask them to go on mute. You can also add backgrounds. So you'll notice today that I have a background on my screen. You'll also notice the person behind me is definitely not moving. So it's a static image and we've uploaded that. So if you click on the three dots within your screen and scroll a little bit down to apply background settings, you'll be able to either select, sorry, go backwards, click happy. You'll either be able to click any of the stock standard images or you'll be able to apply your own. So up the top there, add new. And you might have one that's an organizational one or just a personal picture of your latest holiday. That can be really useful to blur your background, but also be aware that if you have a low bandwidth or a poor internet connection, it may not be as effective. I'll also note here that if you've got low bandwidth, sometimes the audio can come through fuzzy and the individual that is having that low bandwidth might not necessarily know. So always do let other people know if you find their internet connection is poor and then work to resolve that. Now you can view participants in many different ways. So, and Teams has worked so that you can see everyone all together in what we call the large gallery view. They've also worked to develop the together mode. So that can be really useful to see your participants in different ways. So you'll be able to click on the participants and then more actions and be able to see gallery, large gallery, or together mode. Play around with that and see what we all look like on the screen together. I will note that some of them do require a certain number of people with their camera on. So the together mode requires at least 5 people. So it can actually create a gallery. The large gallery view requires 10 people to have their camera on. The large gallery will view up to 49 participants, and that may have updated since I last got that statistic, so because they're always working on it. I find it useful when you've got big sessions where everyone's got their camera on and you're working together to put that on. I will note that sometimes they don't work as well when someone is sharing a screen. So you might want to, so it might not have worked very effectively for you right now because I've got the slide deck on, but you can return to the normal view so you can see the content and select the focus on content option. When you're sharing, there are multiple different ways that you can share. You might share via your screen, so that will show the full screen that everyone can see. You might only show a certain window, so you might just want to show, for example, the slide deck that I'm presenting to you today, or you might just want to show that individual Word document, but not your whole screen. You also might want to share a whiteboard so that you can collaborate all together on that whiteboard. I generally use the screen just because I find it easier so I can bring multiple pieces into it, especially when I've got a second screen. So that I share the second screen and then I'll share that in Teams. And I find that a really great way to work when I'm working with someone online. I will note when you do share the screen, everyone can see everything. So it can see Outlook notifications that can pop up. You can also share your audio by including, when you share it, turning this little dongle on to say share your audio as well. You will need to do that, otherwise they won't be able to hear the video that you're sharing. But that does also mean it will share computer noises, etc. So your Outlook notifications. Peggy, what is the whiteboard feature? Absolutely. So the whiteboard is a digital whiteboard in itself. So instead of us dragging in a whiteboard into the screen, you can all see the whiteboard in the session. What I'd recommend doing is jump on a call and test it. See what it looks like, how it works with everyone. Some people do prefer the Microsoft whiteboard. Others prefer to share, for example, I've had someone share Paint before. I've also shared there's a great range of browser whiteboards that work really well. Other people also use products such as Miro that are a little bit more focused on digital collaboration. It's about finding what's suitable for you and preparing for your presentation accordingly. Now we've sort of talked through what it is to participate in a meeting and how to use that so that you feel more confident in that. Now we're going to jump into how when you're hosting a meeting, how you can set that up to be effective for you. Now we're going to talk through the Microsoft webinar and Microsoft meeting, and that's going to be about what's important for you. So before you pick your session, have a look at what type of engagement and interaction you need for your session. Microsoft Teams has two options, so they have Microsoft Meetings and Microsoft Webinars. Both have similar number of participants and similar interaction. So for the first 1,000 participants, they have full interaction. But then when you go from 1,000 to 2,000, they have view-only capabilities. The key difference with the webinar is the audience interaction can be configurable. So you can change whether people can share or not share, as well as do certain pieces. So you could, in a webinar, disenable chat, for example. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but that might be needed for you. You can also specify presenters. So I'm a presenter in this webinar today, and you'll see in the participant list that I'm separated. The other piece is that the webinar supports registration. So that means people can register for your session. Meetings are set up in Outlook and you prescribe who will participate in the meeting. So the first step when hosting such an event, it will be about figuring out whether you need a meeting or a webinar. And it will be, do you need to be able to track registrations, etc. Then you'll need the webinar. If you've looked at that list and gone, nah, it's a standard meeting, everyone's got the same interaction, everyone's participating, you can schedule your meeting as per normal. So you'll go into Teams in the calendar function and go new meeting, schedule a meeting, and it will pop up with the standard Outlook sort of contact. So you add your participants, you give it a title, you give it a date, and you can edit the message. You'll also see that it's got chat and things like that all up there that can help with the way that you work, and you can jump in and edit that. That will, once you've set that up, that will send it to all the individuals and your meeting is set up. And then you just need to go prepare for the session. If you looked at that list and went, no, I need to be able to manage registrations, I need to be able to manage my participants, and they need to be able to track who attends, you might need a webinar. In that way then, when you're in the new meeting, you need to schedule a webinar. And this will help you create a registration form and you'll be able to select your presenters. Then once that's all created, you'll be able to add that to your registration page. Then once that's created, you'll be able to edit and finalize the creation of your webinar. So you'll be able to organize your co-organizers, your breakout rooms, your captions, your lobby settings, your recording, chat, and presenters. So there's lots more options within a webinar function. It's really down to what you require within there. But then you've set up your first webinar or you've set up your first meeting. So great job. Now you've got to prepare and you've come to the day for the session. So today is your session, your presentation is all ready to go. You've jumped into the webinar a couple of minutes before to prepare. I've got some useful tips for you during the session. So you can absolutely record and capture live captions in a meeting and a webinar. So you can see in the first screenshot, if you click more, you'll be able to access, turn on live captions and start recording. And you'll be able to see at the bottom of the screen there, the live caption will appear. The key tips with this is wherever possible, speak clearly, slowly and directly into the mic. Avoid locations with background noise and avoid multiple people speaking at the same time. The live captions can sort of muffle up then. And there is a slight lag time, so just always be prepared if you've got someone that's got live captions on, that they can able to clearly hear the conversation. And that is really useful to increase accessibility, as well as increase if people aren't able to join your session, they can watch the recording or see the transcription after. When you're presenting, there's 3 ways that you can choose to present. Now, I've kept it today as the standard, but there are more sophisticated options. So you might choose to do the reporter mode. So that's where you sit sort of a bit like a TV news report. You sit on the aid there and you can speak to your content that will sit behind you. You might also do the side by side where you display the webcam next to your content. And you might also do the standout mode. So that will, your image will float above the content. The slide deck will be above you. You can do this by going into when you share, you'll find it on the top. Just here, the different ways that you can select how you present it. This can be really useful, especially when you've got a lot to share and a lot to speak to, and that everyone can see you clearly as you're presenting it. Right. And you can also, change your reporting style on the top of the screen. So when you start sharing, you'll be able to change those options as well. Unfortunately, you won't be able to demo this part of the session today in this session, but I would recommend on your next call having a play around with it. See what you like and what you prefer to use. Polls. Polls are a fantastic way to increase engagement in your session. We recommend setting up your polls prior to your webinar or your meeting, as it will make it simpler in your session when you're delivering your session. Once you've got it set up, then you'll launch it in your meeting. So what you do is when you go to the meeting invite, you might need to press the plus symbol and select add new poll. There you go, and you'll get this tab, and as you can see, there's lots of options here, but we would like to use the poll function. Select the type of poll that you would like to use. And so in here, we've selected a multi-choice option, enter the questions and save. And repeat this for all of your sessions, and you'll see it'll come up in your meeting invite like this. Once you have all your questions set up in your poll tabs, you can see on the right-hand side, the little red image there on polls. You'll be able to press save and drag them into your session when you're ready. And drag them into the order that you'd like to present them as well. Once the poll is launched, so you're in your session, you're discussing the topic and you're ready for your poll, you can click the poll option and you'll be able to launch the correct poll you're ready for. And that will drop into the chat for everyone to use. And you'll just need to select launch. Responses will update immediately and results can be viewed on the polls tab in the real time. And it's really useful to be able to accept as many polls as you want and then also close it and then launch the next one. I find polls really useful to check in everyone's listening to you, as well as capture information to aid your session. So I understand people's interests, etc. The final piece of the puzzle, and probably for some people, you'll be able to see the live and close there as well. And for some people, this has been really pivotal to be able to collaborate effectively online. I think in 2020 and 2021, I was in a breakout room potentially every day at some points. We really quite liked them. Is that breakout rooms? So you can either pre-assign or assign attendees in the session to the number of rooms you'd like to create. Now you can you can click the rooms button, and then you'll either be able to automatically assign everyone to the room or manually assign people depending on the session you're running. You can absolutely add and remove people as required, and then you can also set settings as well. So do you want everyone in there for an hour in the breakout room? Do you want everyone in there for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, etc.? And then similar to Zoom, can people people automatically move in and out of the rooms, or can people manually return back to the main meeting? Finally, sharing the content of the meeting. So your meeting's finished, great. You've sent your polls out and everyone's engaged really effectively. You've used live captions to capture so you can increase the accessibility of the session. You've presented in different ways to increase engagement, use the reporter function, for example, and shared content so everyone knows what you're talking about. Session's ended, everyone's left the call. Now you're looking to share the recording. The recording will appear in the chat at the end of the session. All recordings have an expiry date, which is set by the administrator, and you can extend this so people can access it further. Meetings won't record whiteboards, annotation, or shared notes. You'll need to access that separately. And the organizer will be able to download that meeting recording and share that to people that weren't on the call. So that's what we will do today to make it accessible for everyone. Now I've whizzed through that, so I really hope you do have a lot of questions there. But in the aim of all of this, I hope you've been able to collaborate effectively with it, learn how to collaborate using Microsoft Teams. So using the chat feature and using Teams and channels. Then when you jump on a Teams meeting, you're able to chat and engage with different people, share your screen, share your audio and your backgrounds, navigate different participant views and find out what you prefer. And then with all those skills, present your first Microsoft Team or webinar utilizing polls, recordings, captions, and breakout rooms. Now I ask you, please pop any questions you have about Microsoft Teams in the chat, and we can absolutely jump back to any of the content in the session. We had a really great question the other week, which I want to first answer. And the question was, how do we try and increase the use of Teams within your organisation? And really the best way I can recommend it is to jump in and test and talk. So use the @ symbol when you're chatting with someone. Use the different ways that you engage, use Teams, use channels, use polls to increase the engagement and test it with it. Become the Microsoft Teams champion in your organisation. That's the biggest tip we can recommend in all of this. So thank you. We've got our first question here. Where do you find the sign for breakout rooms? So you will need to, in your Teams, it will be in the pop-up. It'll either be in more options and you'll be able to assign breakout rooms. Now in this set, you won't be able to find it in this meeting today because it is only for presenters to be able to do that. So you will need to jump into your next session, your next meeting, and you will be able to assign breakout rooms. I hope that makes sense. We've got another question here. What do you think are the key decision points when figuring out whether to use webinars or live events? Webinars or live events specifically. So I'll go back to that uh, table earlier that hopefully should be able to talk to this a little bit further. So live events are slightly different again in the Microsoft world in that they are shared, sort of broadcasted straight away. In terms of meetings and webinars, the key points I will identify is the type of interaction you need your audience to have, such as in this session, we limited being able to share content, being able to set breakout rooms, etc., just so that we're able to control the session. You may need that control in your session or not. The other piece is the registration form. Are there certain people that need to be in the session, like a standard meeting, or is it a session where you register and you opt in to participate in the session? That to me are the key pieces of the puzzle there. If you do wish to host live events, we can absolutely send some information out separately addressing that specifically. Great. I hope that answers your question, Amanda. There aren't any other questions. It does. Great. Please feel free to pop any questions you've got in the chat box and we can absolutely answer them for you. And we're always interested to hear what your key takeaways are from the session, as well as what you learnt and what you'd like to see in the next session as well. Great. No questions as yet. That's okay. I'll keep. Yes, Annette, we will share the recording at the end of the session that you can absolutely dive into that a lot further. And hopefully it can help you with your next session. Just getting to the end here. Great. And we will also share a recording and a short survey to hear your participation as well. Great to hear the recording was the key learning for you. That's really interesting, and I'm glad that we've been able to help there. The recommended whiteboard app depends on what you require for your session. So if you're just in a meeting and you quickly want to draw what you're talking about, the Microsoft Whiteboard app might meet your needs. If it's more that you're preparing to present a key workflow or something like that, we've seen great success with Miro as an example because multiple participants can jump into the session and type straight into there. The Microsoft Whiteboard app is more that your cursor becomes a pen, similar to a traditional sort of whiteboard. So they're probably the two, just depends on what you're doing. Are there any IP issues with sharing the recording of this webinar with other staff? So with our webinar, you'll be able to share the meeting invite, sorry, the recording that we send out, that email, you'll be able to share that with your other participants. I'd also recommend jumping on the Connecting Up site and having a look at the other webinars there. We do run these sessions separately over what we call lunch and learns. That may be more effective because everyone will be able to ask questions there as well. And myself and another colleague will be there to answer anything that their concerns are. In terms of sharing a recording in general, it will depend on your permission settings within your organisation on sharing recordings for general meetings. Great. If there are no other questions, please either feel free to continue adding them in the chat and I can respond, or if you've got a quick question that comes to your mind at the end of the session, feel free to respond to the email and we'll be able to get back to you with any answers. I just want to say there'll be a whole bunch of resources that we share at the end of the session, as well as feel free to jump on the Digital Transformation Hub and Connecting Up sites and have a look at the range of webinars and resources out there designed for non-for-profits to help you with your digital transformation. Thank you, Diana. And finally, thank you again for the Div Festival hosting this session today. We want to thank you for all of your participation, and I wish you a very nice Monday afternoon.
Thanks
Great,
so much,
thank you.
Sophie.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.